Welcome to Taking the High Road, a special show dedicated to the trucking industry, specifically at the confluence of recruiting, retention, and compliance. In the fourth year as the host of this show, I bring over 2 decades of industry experience, both on the carrier side as well as the vendor side. And each week I interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insight to the driver lifecycle as we discuss the industry's greatest challenges. I always appreciate your feedback, good or bad. Don't forget to leave a rating and a review. I'd also like to thank and highlight the show's valuable sponsors. Their dedication and commitment to the industry and to the show is greatly appreciated. If you're interested in being a sponsor of the show or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehigherroad.com. Now, I've been looking forward to this episode for months. This week, I'm excited to be joined by an entrepreneurial powerhouse who's created a platform that can solve 2 major problems: provide a second chance opportunity for ex-offenders and make a big dent in the ever-existing driver shortage. Uzoma Orchingwa, co-founder and co-CEO of Emerge Careers. It's an honor to have you join me, Uzoma. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeremy. I'm super excited. Super excited to be here with you.
Well, likewise. And I know everybody calls you Zoe. It's okay if I call you Zoe?
Yes. It's totally cool.
Okay. Cool. Well, I'm anxious to learn about your background, what attracted your entrepreneurial instincts to focus on the justice system and its systemic flaws, and then turn your attention specifically, towards the trucking industry. I'd love for you to share about Emerge Careers and the mission-focused work you're doing there. And I'd ask your advice to the industry so we can help and support that effort versus really giving into the stigma that I think often accompanies ex-offenders. And then lastly, we'll answer a question from a listener during our deeper dive segment. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that works great. That works great.
All right. Well, let's dive in. So as you probably know, I start every conversation with a book recommendation. Can you share a book maybe that you've read that's been impactful for you?
Yeah. The book I'd love to share is Plato's Republic. I was actually an undergrad philosophy major, and that book opened my eyes to a lot of critical questions that we all wrestle with as we go through our lives. It's a book that tries to define what does it take to live a just life, and also what does it take to build a just society. So I always reference that book. A lot of people argue that Plato, all philosophy is a footnote to Plato. So if you're interested around issues of justice or economics or you name it, it will be in that book. There's some reference to it, some honest interrogation. Plato's not always right, but he does always ask the best questions. So I highly recommend that book.
Well, that is excellent, and I think I can say this confidently. Nobody in any prior recordings, 160 or more, has mentioned Plato. I think that's really, really cool. I think I was sharing with you earlier that I have been reading some of the other Stoics, and certainly some books by Ryan Holiday, who highlights a lot of the Stoics. But as you mentioned, Plato is the father of Western philosophy. Very cool. Thank you for that recommendation. I'll add that to my Goodreads list, and I expect I'll be reporting back to you on how I've embraced it. So I'm going to say your bona fides are not typical of someone as young as you are. You're a serial entrepreneur who's founded multiple companies. You've got a JD from Yale Law School, an MBA from Yale School of Management, as well as a Master's of Philosophy from University of Cambridge. I know you've received numerous scholarships and awards, including Fast Company's Most Creative People in Business Award in 2021, and the 2022 MIT Technology Review's 35 Innovators Under 35 Award. You've been featured in New York Times, in Forbes, Washington Post, Business Insider, TechCrunch, Fast Company, among others. So we get it. Okay, you're going places. That's an impressive background. That is fantastic. Aside from what I just shared, can you share a little bit about yourself and what makes you tick? Especially before we get into the important work that you're doing. I'd just love to learn more about Zoe.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that question. My kind of journey to entrepreneurship really starts back into my childhood. So I have a very interesting kind of immigration story. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, to 2 Nigerian parents. And when I was 6 months old, my family moved back to Nigeria, where I grew up for about close to 9 years. And then my mother luckily won a lottery visa. So we were able to come back to the States. But growing up in Nigeria, it's a developing country. with abundance of resources, but close to 50% of people living in the country are living under the poverty line. So there's a lot of destitution, there's a lot of corruption and struggle. And even when I was a young kid, I was kind of precociously trying to understand why. I would watch American movies and see, how amazing things looked in America. I wondered why our community and our streets weren't like that. So I think that's a through line that's really been connected throughout my life, is this understanding of social ills that are around us. Being fortunate enough to I'll have parents that were able to provide for myself and my brothers. A line that my mother always instilled in me is that those who are fortunate have a responsibility to help those who are not, because who else will? And so that's kind of the lens that I use to live my life. When I moved to the States, we moved to Hartford, Connecticut, which is when people hear Connecticut, they may think of country clubs and Yale and things like that. But I was living in inner city Connecticut in Hartford, which is a really rough city that's struggling. And I like to say that I really became American through playing basketball in those courts, meeting my friends, them embracing me and not worrying about my accent and just seeing me as an equal. And so I'd say, yeah, that was the start of my story. It's stemming from Nigeria, coming to Connecticut, really kind of taking in the American system, and a big part of Nigerian culture is a commitment to education. So my goal was always to get to the best school possible, and to leverage those resources to be able to improve the conditions for others. So yeah, but would you like me to get into a little bit more about any of those strands?
Well, I can, first of all, I think I love to hear that, as you said, like Nigerian culture, education is really important. I think if all cultures embrace that, the world would be a lot different place. I mean, there's but being from an inner city in Hartford, Connecticut, or being exposed to that environment, through your formative years, I think that you were able to go to Yale and University of Cambridge. I think that says a lot about your, not only that it's an expectation maybe in a Nigerian culture standpoint, but also you have to be the one to do it. There's drive there, and that's not easy to do. So and I'd say, by the way, when I saw that you had a master's of philosophy and referencing Plato's book, I couldn't help but take a trip down memory lane. I know in 1987, there's a group, Boogie Down Productions, rap hip hop group out of South Bronx, had a song called My Philosophy. And for me, in those years, I'm 50 now. So this was when I was, I don't know how old I was, 14, 15 years old or so. Pretty transformative years for me. And so I still know all the lyrics to that and many other songs from that era. So I know I'm aging myself, but I'll share it with you if you're not familiar with it. It might have been before you were born even, actually. So
yeah, I'd love to check it out. I think we're all philosophers in our own way, and some have studied in school, and others have kind of garnered their knowledge in life. So yeah, I'd love to check out that song for sure.
Well, I'm curious, what was the catalyst that led you to a mission-based solution to address the many shortcomings of the U.S. justice system? And I'll say, aside from Plato, right?
Yes. But no, it was lived experience. Growing up in Hartford, Connecticut, and then subsequently in West Hartford, unfortunately, I had a lot of friends that ended up incarcerated. So there's this photo that I always carry with me, and it's my 7th grade travel basketball team, and 4 of the 9 boys in that photo have been incarcerated. So some of my most closest friends who have been, over my house eating food and just really, really important friends in my life got incarcerated, and that really kind of set me off on this journey to try to better understand why America was such an incarcerated country, and what was leading folks like my friends to get in or to end up incarcerated. And part of that kind of took me on a path through academia. I really wanted to study the issue. So after my undergrad in philosophy, I went to the University of Cambridge, where I got a master's of philosophy in criminology. So I was really able to study the issue, compare our system with other systems like Germany and the Netherlands that were doing far better than we are. But ultimately, what I realized at the end of that academic work was that almost all the effort that goes to trying to transform the justice system is really focused on policy alone. So what do we do with sentencing reform, or what do we do with mandatory minimums? But not enough people were looking into the actual in-prison experience, the carceral experience. What are the resources folks are getting? What are the conditions in which they're held in, and what opportunities are they missing? So taking that lens, what I understood that on average, folks are in prison for about 4 years. That's kind of the national average. That's close to that's almost a 4-year degree. So that gives us a profound opportunity to provide these folks with all the critical resources that they lacked prior to incarceration that contributed to their incarceration. And so that set me off on this path to try to figure out, what could I do? What could I offer to folks while they're incarcerated that would help improve their conditions post-release? And the initial first product was a technology nonprofit company that I founded with my co-founder Gabe. And what we were doing is providing free-to-use communication software and hardware, along with educational resources to the incarcerated completely free of charge. So to those who may not know, there are two companies that really dominate prison telecommunication. And the reason why that's such an important medium is that if you think about not having a phone, imagine not having any communication system in your life right now, you would practically be unable to do anything. Most of what we do is based off the communication technologies, email, phone calls, even this call, what they were having right now, this video call we're having. And so my vision was that I wanted to create a technological bridge that would reconnect the incarcerated with the outside world, and that would get them critical resources that they needed to succeed. And so I started that during my first year of Yale Law School, and we've grown that over the last 5 years. And I recently transitioned to focus primarily on Emerge because I saw a new need that we could build. We've laid the blueprint at Emilio, and the company's scaling pretty aggressively into different prison systems. But Emilio is not a content provider. It doesn't educate. It doesn't necessarily provide you the content, but what it does is provide you the bridge, the technological bridge that allows critical resources to come in. So this next phase in my life is what I want to focus on is, how do we make sure that the 75 million people with criminal records, the 600,000 individuals that cycling in and out of prisons every year, and the 7 million that cycle in and out of jails every year, how do we make sure they don't come back? How do we get them other resources that they need to rebuild their lives? And also, how do we help amazing companies in the US, right? How do we basically connect the dots, get folks jobs and training, and then help support amazing companies that are driving our economic system?
So that's a great segue. I think you kind of shared how, kind of where you started and how you sort of really pivoted or towards Emerge Careers. Let's talk about that. Can you explain what Emerge Careers is and just how the solution? It's a platform. Is that right? How that works.
Yeah, so we're very technology driven. The power of software is that it can scale, it can reach as many people as possible. And so what we saw is, the numbers that I shared with you, there's over 75 million people with criminal record. There's, thousands of jails and prisons all across the country. So what Emerge is a vocational training platform, but it's also a programming case management platform that allows us to not only train students, but to provide them the wraparound support and services that they need to succeed. And then we do also have an employment placement component to it as well. So really what we're trying to do is completely transform vocational education to allow it to reach those who are most vulnerable, who aren't really getting access to these opportunities, and also to really provide quality technology and resources to individuals who otherwise are left to their own devices. And so, someone like me coming from Yale, I think there may be some assumptions around my perspectives and kind of my lived experience. But my family was very low income coming to the U.S. and lived in a one-bedroom apartment for the first year of me arriving in the country, and then we moved to a two-bedroom apartment. So my journey to Yale didn't remove my understanding of the hardships that so many Americans are facing. So what we really want to do is really provide a transformative trades and vocational training platform to folks who need it to aggressively find and recruit those individuals who don't pay for the service. We are primarily being paid by the government, and to get amazing employees for companies who are in dire need. So that's in a nutshell. That's what Emerge Career does.
Well, I highlighted your personal accolades earlier, but I don't want to gloss over the fact that Emerge Careers has also been recognized as the best in business by Inc. magazine, which I think is telling, and I think that's really great. Um, how is Emerge Careers solving some of the industry's greatest challenges? Certainly the ones that this show is entirely focused on, right? Retention is a big issue. Um, how is that? How is Emerge Careers solving and helping address that?
Yeah, so really at the core of it is we're aiming to improve retention and safety, and we also want to create a sustained and prosperous ecosystem for all the stakeholders that are in the trucking space. Not just the potential employees, but the companies, the government, and the communities that these companies operate in. So as for retention, what we're doing is we're bringing a fleet of loyal drivers to the industry who have traditionally been overlooked. And so I've mentioned, formerly incarcerated folks have on average 60% joblessness rate. But what the research is telling us is that research from the Northwest tells us that folks with a criminal record actually have much higher retention rates than their unincarcerated counterparts. In addition, they actually, not only do they stay at the companies longer, but they actually are shown to be to work longer hours and be more productive as well. So it's a little counterintuitive. But if you really think about it, formerly incarcerated individuals recognize that they've made a mistake, especially folks who are aggressively seeking opportunity, and they are so grateful for the individual that's able to give them that first hand up. And we've seen countless examples of that, of students that we've trained and placed at the companies who are flourishing and doing incredibly well right now. But in addition, that we do want to get rid of that stigma. I think highlighting the fact that research shows that companies are in no way more likely to be victimized by crime by hiring formerly incarcerated individuals. But I also want to highlight one company out in Ohio, Nehemiah Manufacturing. Kind of shocking. I was reading about them in the Harvard Review, and I had an opportunity to speak with their CEO. And one thing that Nehemiah does is they only hire second chance employees. And what they've learned is that it fundamentally improved their retention. It improved the workplace culture in many ways, in that you had individuals that had been through a lot of different hardships and knew the value of the work. And they also saw the productivity go up as well. And I'm not saying that that's a right model for every company, but I think that shows that the stigma around the ex-offenders is one that really shouldn't exist, right? That we are a country that believes in second chances. And if we look at the data, formerly incarcerated individuals that go into different industries, even truck driving, have a much higher retention rate than those that weren't.
Well, and I don't know that I would say that's unintuitive or non-intuitive, because I think it makes sense, right? From the exact reason that you just described. I mean, you're talking about people who are so grateful. The opportunities are so slim, and when someone is willing to give them that chance, they are going to work hard. They have to work harder than, most others anyway. I just think it's fantastic. And, interestingly, a few years ago, I was at an ATA event where a demographer is a speaker, an author, his name's Ken Gronbeck. He spoke, and he and I sat at lunch together before he spoke. And after he found out that I was in the, driver recruiting software space, he said that he knew a silver bullet that would eliminate the driver shortage. This is what he said. He said, if we could find a way to employ ex-offenders in a meaningful way, it would be all that's necessary to address this ongoing issue. What are your thoughts on the concept of that being sort of a scalable way to end the driver shortage as we know it?
I think he's spot on. And one of the reasons why we first chose the transportation industry to be the first location we got into was talking to users, right? When we were inside of these prisons or talking to folks who were formerly incarcerated and asking them, hey, what career paths are you guys interested in? What are you looking forward to? And almost in unison, what we heard was truck driving. And it's for a number of reasons. One is imagine being incarcerated, being locked in a cell for years or months, however long you're in there. The concept of having an employment that really allows you the opportunity to drive, to potentially see parts of the world is incredibly exciting to, to this community. But also, everyone also they also understood that it's a blue collar work that pays you a great wage. But if you work hard in it, you can build a career for yourself and for your family. And so that's really what gave us that initial impetus to go pursue this career track for our students, to really build out a holistic program that would support them. I also kind of wanted to talk about safety. I know the safety is incredibly important to trucking companies. And so what we've done is that we don't only provide holistic education for our students on skills they're required to obtain their licenses, but we also really focus on safety practices as a driver on the road. So in our training, we're constantly reinforcing the importance of having a clean and safe record. We are one of our main CDL instructors, Celia Chess, has been in the industry for over 27 years, and it's really able to instill in these students the importance of being safe on the road. And so to kind of talk a little bit about it, once our participants have obtained their certification, our success coaches who are constantly working with students are preparing them for the job interview, for reviewing their resumes, uh, uh, preparing them for the workspace, like things that they're going to experience. In every workspace, there's going to be arguments and potentially conflicts. How do you de-escalate that? How do you be proactive in reaching out to your manager and letting them know about issues that you're having? So we really our model is to be completely wraparound and holistic. And we don't stop after the students have been placed with an employer. We provide 12 months of job retention support as well. We want to make sure that that person is supported and is getting all the help and resources they need to really succeed at the company.
It sounds like that's the right way to do it, because if you just say, and you're off, without some support, they've been in jail. I mean, as you said, an average in prison 4 years. I mean, that's quite an adjustment
It
without
is.
some more support, and support from contextual, understood support, I think is important. And now I think there's a lot of companies, this has been a thing that I've talked to a lot of carriers about for years. And I think a lot of companies will endorse the idea, but they're reticent to do that publicly out of just a fear of the perception that they might have when it comes to, hiring ex-offenders. What do you say to them to address that concern?
Yeah, I totally understand the concern because it does seem intuitive, right? Someone has done something poorly in the past. They've been incarcerated. Perhaps it's a good proxy of what they may do in the future. But as I mentioned, I'm actually a trained criminologist. I studied at University of Cambridge, and I worked with some of the leading criminologists across not just the country but the world. And I've read the data. I've looked deeply into the research, and criminologists have concluded that there is no research that demonstrates that hiring someone who's an ex-offender exposes your business to any more crime or theft than otherwise would exist. So the data is clear, right? Giving someone a second chance does not make your company any less safe or more prone to criminality. So kind of dispelling that stigma is really important, but also want to really focus on the positives, right? And not just the kind of the kumbaya positives of, we'll build a better society. All that is super important. But I imagine as you're thinking about it purely from a business perspective, if that stigma is not the case, right? If you're not more likely to be victimized by hiring a formerly incarcerated individuals, then focusing on the positives, the fact that they're much higher retention, and some studies are showing higher productivity. And so you're going to be able to save a lot of money because there's nothing worse than having to retrain a new hire or losing a really successful hire. And so that's a monetizable positive impact that's going to happen in your company. And as a Nehemiah example also shows, right, there's stuff that is intangible. These are individuals that have struggled their whole lives and have really not had a lot of opportunity. And if we wanted to really be honest about it, 80% of everyone who's incarcerated in prison right now had no income 5 years prior or a year prior to their incarceration, and 50% had no income 5 years prior. So poverty and lack of opportunity is a main driver for why folks end up incarcerated in the first place. So if we just give them that opportunity, we give them, especially folks who've gotten their CDL or have gotten went so far as to get that credential and shown this to succeed. I think it's a win-win-win for everyone. It's a win for trucking companies, and that they can fill the shortages with these hires that are going to be loyal and more productive. But also it's a win for the individual, a person that gets a second chance to provide for their families, and then win for society as well, and that we have less crime and much more prosperous communities. So I would tell them to not worry about that stigma, that the data is actually pointing in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and I think that makes a ton of sense. And it for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip the deeper dive question, which is okay for this particular conversation, because this is really important stuff, and I think it's a noble cause. If you could share, what can carriers do? Those who are listening, like, how do we become a partner? Where can the audience learn more about Emerge Careers? And before you answer that, am I right to say there's no cost to carriers that you partner with? Is that right?
Exactly. There's absolutely no cost to carriers. Our core focus is training these individuals and placing them. So there's completely no charge to the carriers. Folks can learn more about us on emergecareer.com. And they can also reach out to me at Zoe at Emerge Career, or at support at Emerge Career as well. And really the call to action here is we want you to join our Second Chance Fleet program. So if you're a carrier that's looking for loyal, hungry drivers that are going to be incredibly productive and just incredibly appreciative of the opportunity you provided them, then you should contact us and join the Second Chance Fleet program. We will be, as I mentioned, we're tech driven. So there'll be abundance of resources that you have on each of the candidates that you might be considering. And again, we do provide that wraparound support to them as well. So if you're interested, go to our website and or reach out to me via email.
That is awesome. And so thank you so much for joining me. I love the work you're doing, and I genuinely appreciate your heart, your dedication to such a noble cause. You're providing hope for those who really deserve a second chance. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And thanks for joining me for another episode of Taking the Higher Road. Stay tuned for the next episode, as I'm joined by Ed Nagel III, President and CEO of Toledo-based Nagel Companies. Once again, special thanks to the sponsors of this show. We really appreciate you. If you're interested in being a sponsor or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehigherroad.com. Until next time, thank you for taking the higher road.